Welcome back, everybody, to Holden's 11. I'd like to welcome a special guest tonight. It's my good friend, writer, editor, and letterer, Matias Zanetti. Thanks for joining us, Matias.
Hey, thanks, Tim. A pleasure to be here.
I'm real excited to have you here, and we got a great topic for tonight, so this one's going to be a lot of fun. Tonight's topic is the top 11 sci-fi films that are not Star Wars.
That's a great title.
It's a great title, right? And the reason why we did it this way is because, of course, everybody knows I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And the thing about Star Wars, it tends to dominate these lists. So we do have a plan in a future episode to have an exclusively Star Wars related content. But for tonight, we want to talk about some of the films that inspired us creatively, and maybe some of the ones that didn't get talked about quite as much as Star Wars did. So without further ado, let's launch right into it. Number 11 is District 9, directed by Neil Blomkamp.
I love that movie.
Did you? What was your favorite part about it?
Well, I saw it in the movies like twice, I believe, and the the social commentary
Yeah.
that the movie has, it's not something I was used to at the time. So it struck me really hard. I love that. I love when science fiction address another topic and like the sci-fi elements get like on the bottom, like
Yeah.
it's not the main element, but it contributes to the whole.
Yeah, I agree, because he's got kind of an element of the problems of immigration and things like that in that film. And
Sure.
I think something that Neil Blomkamp does really well is he has a sense of realism in his
Yeah.
science fiction. And what I mean by that, he has the spaceships are very dirty and they look lived in, and I really like
Sure.
that. It kind of makes it more realistic, right?
And some of the camera decisions are very like documental, like well, it's like a mock-up, like he was filming a documentary at some parts of the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. It
Like there
feels
are interviews and such, but also like you know, like it's something there. It's someone there with a camera, like recording all that, and it's the realism that us meets.
yeah,
It's
I agree.
awesome.
I agree. Kind of has the feel of a documentary.
Yeah, and the humor, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
Yeah, and I think he's got kind of that background for his movies. This one's not on the list, but he has another sci-fi movie that was really good. Isn't he the director of Elysium
Yeah,
with Matt
yeah,
Damon?
he
That
is.
that one's a little
Yeah,
bit like that too. So, but
yeah,
I don't want to skip over to number 10, because it also features some extraterrestrial life. Number 10 is Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. This one is one of my all-time favorites, and I can
sure.
remember when it first came out, they had that cool poster, which is just the egg, and it says, "In space, no one can hear you scream." And from that point on, I have liked all of Ridley Scott's movies, just about.
Yeah, yeah, amazing movie. And even today, it remains magic and frightful, interesting to watch. I think the first is my favorite of all the saga. I've seen them all,
Yeah,
and the first one is the one I love the most
they're all pretty
because
good. I like Aliens too. The second one is pretty good too.
I do, yeah, yeah. But the first one, the like the way the characters act, it's very 70. It's something that the other movies doesn't have. It's like a special quality of a sci-fi movie of that era that I really like.
Yeah,
I don't
and
know how to explain it.
they did something that was kind of cool, which was in the very first one, they didn't show the alien too much. A lot of it was tension building and just glimpses of the alien, which which I think it was scarier that way.
Sure, it's the scariest one.
And of course,
Yeah,
we got to mention the design work of H.R. Giger. Is that how you say his
yeah.
name? I hope I said that right. But yeah, that's the first time I was exposed to his work. And of course, over the years, I have loved all of his disturbing and haunting artworks that he's done for various movies.
Me too. Very sexual, very dark, very disturbing.
Yeah, yeah, good way to put it.
And I love the the robot. Like it's like an android, like the
Yeah,
android character.
right.
That's a great twist.
Yep.
I love that character, and
It's-
and I love that they remain some of the stylistical decisions and designs of that android remain in Promethea
yeah.
and some of the robots shown there.
I love Prometheus too. That one I almost had that on the list too, but I figured I had Alien, so I had Ridley Scott covered. But Prometheus I've seen a number of times, and I think that improves actually with each viewing. It's kind of that one's very deep. It's a little more philosophical, the origins of man and that kind of thing.
I love that movie too, the first one, right? The
Yeah.
other ones, I think the second is just bad. I don't like the sequel of Promethea. I don't remember the name exactly, but
Is that Alien Covenant?
yeah, I think so. I didn't like that one.
Yeah.
It was like weird to show the monster in daylight, and some of the
Right.
decisions I didn't like.
Well, and of course, that's the challenge of horror films and sometimes sci-fi films is sometimes the first one is the best because the
Uh,
audience has that element of seeing something fantastic. And I think it's more difficult to, by the second or third time, it's just not as impactful.
Imagine a world where there isn't any sequels, all original material. That must be something interesting, but the
Sure.
industry doesn't work that way.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, and speaking of franchises that have had several sequels, we'll go to number 9 on the list. That's Terminator, directed by James Cameron. I am a huge Terminator fan, and that's one that I would say again, the first one was the best in my opinion. But of
Yeah,
course, it launched this whole franchise. What's your thoughts on the Terminator?
I love the first two movies. The rest of them not too much,
Yeah.
but it was very impressive. I saw them in the 90s. I'm a little younger than you. I didn't catch them on the movies, but it certainly mm, make an impression on me.
Yeah.
There are some scenes, especially the second one is the one that I recall the most because on my country in Argentina, uh, that one in the TV they put it on, and I've seen it
Yeah.
a lot more than the first one.
Right.
But I love the character and the story of Connor and all this arc of trying to save humanity. I love it.
Yeah. And I think that when you have a time travel element, that really makes the story a little bit more it's more compelling, like because you want to see, well, is the future gonna change, what's gonna happen. And a
Sure.
little trivia there, the first Terminator movie, they got sued at the time for taking the concept from a famous author by the name of Harlan Ellison. Did you ever hear about that?
No, I didn't know that.
He's one of my favorite authors, and he wrote for The Outer Limits and he wrote for Star Trek and so many great books. But he also wrote this short story called, I believe it was called Soldier. And anyway, it's the story of Terminator. And he
Okay.
sued Carolco, the production company, and he won.
He
So
won.
he
Oh,
won. Yeah, that's why his name is now on all the Terminator movies.
oh, I
So
didn't know that.
yeah, there was something to it. There was something to it. So I
Yeah,
guess
sure.
he was the first one to come up with the concept of a soldier coming back from the future to stop a nuclear war, which is basically the premise of his short story, Soldier. Little
If
trivia.
you had to think about an original plot, an original sci-fi idea now, it's so difficult because
Right?
you can remix some ideas, but
Right.
new ones, it's in the 20th century seems
Yeah.
like they explore it all.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. And not to mention that, so many of us that have seen all these movies and of course that are still living today, so many of the things actually came true. They're not necessarily fantastic anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
So speaking of the dystopian futures, I have number 8 on the list. We see again Ridley Scott directing Blade Runner.
Oh.
I'm a huge fan of Blade Runner. It's a little darker than some of the material on this list, but the thing that I liked about it the most is the art direction and the dark and dystopian future cities they made for Blade Runner. What's your thought about these cities?
Well, I love that movie, and the setting is so out of this world, but at the same time a mix of different cultures that it's fascinating,
Hmm.
and it's very well done. You believe in that city. You believe in him walking those streets and buying that food, and
Yeah,
all
yeah,
seems so strange and dirty and like uncomprehensible.
right,
And I
right.
love that feeling. Uh, it's amazing.
Yeah, and wasn't it was the city was like half Asian too, wasn't that right? I remember the
Yeah,
signs all had
sure.
Asian letters. Or
You
I
know,
guess it
the
was.
the giant size of an Asian woman taking a pill.
Yeah, 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 right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would definitely be fair to say that Blade Runner has influenced my work and what I'm doing a little bit, with some
Sure.
40 years later. And of course, the movie, I think it held up pretty well. It's still very popular today.
Yeah, and I think part of it it's because it doesn't give you all the answers. It's a very mysterious movie and very philosophical one, and I think you connect the dots in your head, and that's something I appreciate a lot in fiction. That that you have to work to understand
Yeah.
the meanings behind what you are seeing or reading.
Well said. Well said, Matias. I agree. Sometimes people say that the best fiction is that you have to work for a little bit, and that it's it's not necessarily everything's laid out for you. You have to kind of interpret the meaning yourself.
Yeah, the whole issue with Harrison Ford, his character being a replicant or not,
Right, right.
those kind of questions, along with the dream, with the unicorn dream and the origami, and
Yeah.
later the second movie it might have answered that. But if we stick with the first one, it's just amazing the mystery it builds.
Yeah. Yeah. Terrific movie. Well,
Yeah.
we're gonna turn towards something just a little bit lighter. Number 7, The Iron Giant by
Oh.
Brad Bird. What a great film, right?
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
I'm a fan of The Iron Giant ever since it came out. And the thing that I like the most about it, first, it's got kind of like this lighthearted tone, and it's very much sort of a tribute or an homage to these great sci-fi films of the 1950s, or what some people would call the
Hmm.
atomic age.
Yeah.
And yeah, even the way they have, the government agent is trying to track down the giant, and you have the aggressive military trying to track down the giant, and the whole thing. It's a fun movie, and it is suitable for kids, but there's also enough, I think, for adults that they can enjoy the content. Would you agree with me?
Yeah, it's strange. The idea of a government agent, it's something you don't see in movies for kids, like in this century. It's
Yeah.
something like reminds me of E.T., the extraterrestrial,
Yeah. Good
that
point. Yeah.
that probably has the influence. of the 50 movies that you told me, the movies from the 50s.
Right. Right.
Uh, it's the idea of your government chasing you. It's very scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I was a kid watching this, well, I don't know how kids think right now, but at that time it feels scary. And a comment also, the movie it's it's animated in the old way of animated movies, like
Yeah.
2D. One of the
Correct.
last 2D movies made, and that's like that's a point, like one thing in its favor, I think.
Right. Makes it feel a little bit more classic.
I miss those movies. It's
Me too.
so strange how the 3D movies like ate everything in the industry.
Right. Yeah.
Probably because it's cheaper, but
Yeah. It's
it's hard to see 2D movies at that scale,
right.
uh, in mainstream movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. And I will say too that the other thing the Iron Giant does well, and how do I want to say this? I want to tie this into, in this list, I wish we had more representation of what I call the 1950s classic sci-fi movies, because they're some of my favorites. And some of those are what they call B movies, meaning they're
Yeah,
not quite excellent movies, but
you love
we
those
love them
ones.
anyway. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I will say that's because we're saving those for the next list. We will have one doing the
Oh,
1950s only movies, because there's so many
wow,
of them
amazing.
too.
Yeah,
And I didn't want to focus on totally modern movies, so we'll change it up just a little bit. When we go to number 6, Metropolis from 1927, directed by Fritz Lang. And the thing I want to mention about Metropolis, it's a little bit more of what you might call a German expressionist movie. It's very visual. And the reason why I chose it for the list was because the visuals of it are very, very relevant today, and very much an inspiration for me and some of our work, even that we've done together. The character
yeah,
there, Maria, the female robot in Metropolis, of course, was the inspiration for our robot Marilyn Monroe, who turns up in the book Lost at Sea. And that's actually where I first
sure.
got the idea.
Yeah, it's an amazing movie. And I saw that movie as a teenager. I was determined to be a movie director. I studied cinema some years, and that's that that is one of the first movies I saw, like reviewing the cinema history, and it was amazing to find sci-fi done in that time.
Yeah.
So visually, like
1927.
you said. Yeah, that's amazing. And some of the visual effects are so great for the time.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing when you think that somebody made that in 1927. I mean, it's before World War II, which, everything was different back then.
And the idea of like the double or the usurper, like a person that is not the like it's
Yeah. She was,
doubling someone,
yeah, she was a duplicate, right?
the duplicate. Yeah,
Yeah.
that it's so universal, and you can enjoy that movie even today.
Yeah. That's a great
Over
one. That's a great one.
100 years. That's amazing.
It's hard to believe. Like, I wonder if when he made that movie, if he had any inclination how long it was going to last. Like, if you think about, people still talk about that movie today, like you said, almost 100 years later. Here we are talking about it, and it's on the top 11 list.
I think it was all so new back there. Like everything was ready to be discovered. Like ways to do cinema, like genres to explore, and ways to move the camera to tell
Yeah,
stories with
yeah.
images and sound. I don't know how Chris Lang felt he and his
Well,
team.
and I love to tell our audience that are watching our videos, Matias, some of the things we talk about, maybe somebody is not familiar with the movie Metropolis. It is almost 100 years old. But we are here today because we celebrate the things that we love and that inspired us. And if you haven't seen it, please go and check out Metropolis from 1927. It is a treat. And I promise you, it's an experience. You'll walk away from it going, wow, that was a really wild movie.
Yeah, and it certainly influenced the movies and the fictions we consume today. So
Sure. Yeah.
it's like a, a very important movie for cinema and for sci-fi.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for saying that. So my next movie, I have to tell you, is another big influence on me. I can't wait to see if you're the same way on this one. This is number 5, Planet of the Apes from
Oh,
1968. This was directed by a fellow named Franklin J. Schaffner. Hope I got your name correct, Mr. Schaffner. Um, when I first saw this movie, I didn't know what to expect. And in those days, of course, now the twist is very well known. It has been duplicated and made into comedies and so many things. But the fact that this apocalyptic world, thousands of years in the future, and bang, it was the Earth all along. And you have the climactic shot, of course, with the Statue of Liberty. Being a little kid watching that movie, and of course, I was still a little, I'm not that old. I saw it on television, but my mouth,
how old were you?
well, when the movie came out, I was only 3 years old. So I saw it on TV probably when I was maybe 10 or 11, young enough where it had a tremendous impression on me. And I can remember my mouth just hanging open. Wow, it's the Statue of Liberty. I couldn't believe it. And of course, the way they shot it was that's a very cinematic reveal. And
Yeah,
even for its time, the special effects were even pretty decent and the makeup effects were very good. And of course, Charlton Heston, what a great movie star and the ability to sell any role. I thought he did a terrific job in that movie.
yeah. I think I only saw that movie once, and I already knew the twist because I'm from the Simpsons generation, and I
Right.
grew up watching the Simpsons,
Of course.
and I first saw the Planet of the Apes musical on the episode of the
Yeah.
Simpsons. So
Dr. Zayas,
uh,
Dr. Zayas. That's great.
exactly.
I love
so
that. I
so
love
I
that too, by the way.
and and I also I think the first Planet of the Apes movie I watched was the one from Tim Burton that I
Oh,
didn't like a lot. I
right.
didn't like
Yeah.
it,
Yeah. That's
but the new saga I like it very much,
I was going to
especially the
say,
first one. The
right. I wanted
first
to
one is
quick ask
amazing.
you, right. Like we mentioned earlier, one of the thoughts of our channel is that we try to focus on things that we love and not necessarily to rag on the things that we didn't like. So I'm not going to say very much about the Tim Burton version, but I will say the current remake, by current I mean the one with Andy Serkis.
Yeah,
Wow, it's so good, right? And I love
amazing.
they have a new twist, which is there's this, of course, it was a pandemic too, which
Yeah.
caused the humans to die off and the apes to become supreme. And the ending of that movie is a very good one where, people are starting to cough and there's a little blood and it ends with the reporting cases of this ape flu or whatever they're calling it. But
Oh,
what a great ending, right? Like that one, I'll say the new series may be as powerful as that first movie.
yeah. When the main, what was the name of the ape? The
He is Caesar.
Caesar, yeah. When Caesar says no,
Yeah,
oh, I still have the chills,
right. Me
Like,
too.
whoa,
Yeah, very
Andy
powerful.
Serkis is amazing. I love all the work he's done, and that movie. It's very powerful, very powerful. I
And of
can I
course,
can relate a lot with Caesar. I
yeah,
think that's the idea.
yeah, that's the idea. And also, we should mention that's Andy Serkis, who's just done such a terrific job with his motion capture acting work. He
Yeah,
was Caesar, and he was also Gollum.
yeah. and a
That's
lot of other
true.
characters like King
Yeah,
Kong and
yeah, yeah,
the Tintin movies.
yeah.
He's been working a lot. I love Andy Serkis.
He's also in the Marvel universe. He's Claw in the
Yeah, I
was it
think so. Yeah,
the second Avengers movie? But he's in
like
there
a
somewhere too.
terrorist or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
the guy who loses his arm to Ultron. So
Oh,
I'm a
okay.
fan of Andy Serkis too. You can tell.
Yeah.
But I will say that, the Planet of the Apes series and that type of science fiction has very clearly influenced my own work. And I'll tell you how I say this is that often when I'm trying to write a script, and maybe you've noticed this too, I always try to go for a little bit of what they call a twist ending. And I think the best stories are those that have an ending that either A, it's not quite what you thought was going to happen, or B, a transformation of the character, some kind of unexpected event. And I think that there's so many scripts these days and so many films and books that are, one or two chapters into it, you kind of already know what's going to happen. And I guess
Yeah.
that's the challenge with writing, isn't it? Is how do you keep it fresh and inventive? But I can tell you, for me, between Planet of the Apes and of course The Twilight Zone was another show that I loved so much back then, and they were very big on the twist endings.
Yeah, sure. Well, in short stories, it's a must.
Yeah, I think
You
you have
you
to have
must
that.
have the twist.
Yeah, yeah, at least in some form. It doesn't have to be, completely dramatic, but it should be something that will pique the imagination of the reader.
Yeah, sure. I agree.
Our next selection here, and this is one that you picked, Matias, so I can't wait to hear about this. This is number 4, Wall-E from 2008.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
Pixar Productions, and that's directed by a fellow named Andrew Stanton. And I love the Pixar movies. I thought this was a great film. And just to start off with, I loved the robot designs.
Oh, yeah. They are amazing. And I was thinking today about how Wally was influenced by like slapstick and Charlie Chaplin
Huh?
and like physical comedy.
Yeah, sure.
And the movie it's very emotional for me. I've seen it many times. I watched it in the movie and later at home, and the, the all the arc of Wally and how he begins and how it all ends. It's very moving for me.
Right.
It's like very bright and very hopeful for problems, and that strikes me really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, I would
Do
agree
you
with you.
like the movie?
Very much so, very much so. And I do think that you mentioned something that's more true today than ever, which is, and especially in science fiction, which is having what I call an emotional element is critical to good storytelling. And, especially with things like action movies, I think they're more powerful when they include some type of emotional element. And it doesn't have to necessarily be sadness or love or, it can be any emotion. But I think that sometimes movies, they tend to skip over the emotion and they go right to another car chase.
Yeah.
So
And
that's,
no, I was going to say the character of Wally is so special that every robot he interacts with become more sentient,
yeah, yeah,
um, like Eve at the beginning, she wasn't emotional, she wasn't feeling anything, she was just a robot
right,
doing her job.
right.
But Wally interacts with other characters and like bring the, something very powerful from within them, and that's amazing. The transformation of Eve and how she becomes a hero.
Yeah, yeah.
And all the other characters, the robot characters they encounter on the mothership, it's an amazing adventure. I love the movie. It's like a roller coaster.
Yeah. It's a terrific film, and I'm so glad you recommended it because I had almost forgotten about it. And we talk about the great sci-fi films, and there's so many good ones that
Yeah, sure.
You know, I've said before, it's difficult to maintain the integrity of these lists because sometimes you feel bad for, you know, skipping one. And I just want
Yeah.
to say thanks, Matias, for reminding me about Wall-E.
No problem.
So the next one I think is going to be a popular one. And we talked a little bit earlier about time travel. And this was a big hit when it first came out. Of course, this is Michael J. Fox in 1985, Back to the Future. That's going to be our number 3. Of course, that was directed by Robert Zemeckis. Also had a very successful set of sequels. And the second sequel was actually pretty good, as I recall. But for
Yeah.
yeah, it's actually number 2 might even have been a little better, right?
Well, I love the first one, but the second one is amazing. So also, maybe the third one not so much,
The
but
third one was
well,
like the Western one, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. I
But the
remember.
first one, it's a masterpiece. A
Yeah,
masterpiece.
I
I
agree.
love
I
that
agree.
movie.
One of my favorite all-time scenes, and this is one that has lived on through the years about the comedy, when he's going on stage and he's a guitar player. And remember, he's kind of really rocking out on stage. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, they couldn't understand what he was doing. He says, hey, your kids are going to love it.
Yeah, sure. Like the times change and so much. Imagine someone listening like 30 years ago, listening our music, like your urban music, like trap music. It's something so
Yeah.
weird, and
Yeah.
that's the feeling that scene conveys.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I also love movies that have what I call the mad scientist trope, which are, there you have Christopher Lloyd as
Yeah,
Doc Brown, right? And he's, you know, he's building this time traveling DeLorean. It's just a great character, and you know, he's
yeah,
crazy and his hair is standing up, and they got to get to 88 miles per hour. We got to get back to the future. It's just a terrific script, you know.
yeah, yeah. I agree. Terrific. And well, I think it's the first movie I saw um, dealing with the issues of time travel. I think it's the first one
Yeah.
because I saw it when I was a kid, and that was just mind blowing. It was
Yeah.
amazing, like to discover the possibilities of changing the past and
Right.
changing the
Right.
future,
Sure.
and also like always when there is an adventure, uh, the you have to hurry because of something like he's going to disappear, like
Right.
her
Right.
sister and brother, and you have the
Yeah.
feeling
Urgency.
of urgency. It's
Yeah.
just amazing, and it does the adventure much more compelling. You know?
Yeah. I totally agree. And I'm a big fan of the script. And it's funny, I look back on some of those movies and I remember, I think Steven Spielberg was involved in some way in that movie too.
Yeah,
But of course, Robert Zemeckis went on to make all these great films as well. And, you know, these are relatively early in his career. But, you know, you talk about Back to the Future at the time was just a smash here in the US. I mean, it was on every magazine and advertised everywhere, and just everybody loved it. And even all the sci-fi elements, you know, he had the lace them up yourself sneakers, and he had the hovering skateboard, and
yeah.
all the neat things, you know. Great movie and very worthy of inclusion on this list.
Yeah,
Now,
sure.
as we go to the next one, I'm going to talk about some directors that are a little bit divisive. And I'm curious to see what you think, Matias. And the reason why I say this, they've made some movies that are terrific and considered classics, and some that some people would consider clinkers, right? They're leave a little bit to be desired. So we're going to
Okay.
pull right into number 2, The Matrix by the
Oh,
Wachowskis,
yeah,
which it was 1999. In the notes, it says the Wachowski brothers. I think they're the Wachowski sisters now.
yeah.
But so I'm just going to say the Wachowskis because I'm not sure how you say if it was when they made it or what they're classify as now. So I'll just say the Wachowskis. But what a terrific movie. And I will tell you, when I first saw that one, it opened my eyes about science fiction writing, and the way they tied the visuals together, the way it's not quite time travel, but traveling back and forth between the Matrix and the real world. And of course, it also had, as you know, a lot of Asian influences, which is something
Yeah.
that I like, particularly the martial arts parts. Did you see this movie new or DVD? How did you first experience it?
I've seen it many times, and I think that I've never seen it in the cinema. I think when when the movie came to Argentina, I think mm, most of us miss it. Like it was a big hit at the time in Argentina, I believe. Mm, but later uh, we we uh, we were all talking about that movie, and it was very influential and super amazing. And the funny thing is that the script, it's a beautiful script,
Yeah,
but the structure is so universal. It's nothing new. It's something that it's the story we keep telling each other, like the hero journey and everything.
yeah.
But the way every element like
The way it
goes
blends
into the
together.
movie, yeah, it's fascinating. And even today, it's a great movie. I watched all the movies before seeing the last one this year. I think in January I saw the film,
Hmm.
and it was great to revisit all the saga, even if I just love the first one.
I think you make a great point that one of the successes of that movie is that it blends so many different types of genres. Like if you would look at all the pieces, you might say, well, this isn't going to work. But when you put them all together with something very fresh and very compelling, and even the script was so good. One of my favorite lines is in that movie where they're bringing in all the guns, and she says, "This has never been done before," and he says, "That's why it's going to work." It's a great line, right? So
Yeah,
I guess in this case, they both wrote and directed that movie, is my understanding. And I
I
actually
think
also
so.
like the sequel, The Matrix Reloaded, which has some really great scenes in it too. Some of the other movies I know weren't quite so well received, and I can kind of understand why. But it's hard to, when something is so fresh and original the first time, I think there's a tendency to, maybe for the sequels, it's kind of hard to keep that energy alive.
Yeah, I don't know what's the case here. Um, I uh, I I support the Wachowski sisters very much, even though I really don't like uh, their movies,
Mm,
uh, except for the first Matrix.
yeah,
They are okay, but neither of the the next movies they made had an impact like that one. They
right.
were just like eh, or like so.
Yeah,
Um,
they sort of
I
fizzled
don't
after
know
a little bit
why,
after that.
because they mean well. You know what I mean? They mean
Yeah.
well. They have great ideas and sometimes excellent execution, but there's something that I don't buy about them. I
And
don't know why.
certainly they were so creative and so
Sure,
innovative. The two sisters must have been far ahead of their time.
sure,
And maybe I sometimes think, when you think how far ahead they were at that time, maybe that's one of the reasons why the other movies didn't feel quite right, is because they're still ahead of their time and we just haven't appreciated them, possibly.
it can be. Yeah, it can be.
It might be
Let,
that.
yeah. Did you see the fourth Matrix film?
I watched the beginning of it. It
Oh,
was, yeah, I didn't see the whole way through, which that's usually,
oh.
for me, that's kind of a bad sign. I'll give it another go. Remember, I don't hate things. I don't bust on things, but it was, it didn't grab me the same way. And I will tell you what I thought, but please don't take this like a complaint. I don't want the readers to say, "Hey, you said you wouldn't complain about anything." But it did seem a little too closely derivative of the first one. And maybe it was to be more like a tribute or an homage. I have to maybe devote a little time to really
Yeah.
maybe to really appreciate it, because I generally I like that kind of thing and I like that kind of movie. So it just didn't sometimes it takes me 2 times or even 3 times before something clicks.
Yeah. I think it's derivative, and they even talk about the first movie in the movie. It's something
Right, right.
meta, like it's not for everybody, and I found out it's not for me.
Right, right.
I love going to the movies, and I enjoy watching that movie in the theater.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, like any good top 11 list, I'm sure number one will be the source of some debate. And I really struggled with what to make the number one movie. And first, again, I want to tell you, all things considered, otherwise, this would have, of course, been Star Wars right here. But we want to reserve our Star Wars material for our next list, which we're still putting together. And I didn't, there's a tendency for Star Wars to be sort of an 800-pound giant and to dominate all these
Sure.
media. So I wanted to make sure we had something that maybe some people have seen, maybe some people haven't seen. But of course, like all the elements of this list, Matias and I encourage you to go out and check these out and experience them for yourself. And this one is certainly an experience if you haven't seen it. I'm talking about number one, 2001, A Space Odyssey. That's from 1968 by Stanley Kubrick. What a film, right?
Yeah, indeed. I love that film.
I guess the
And
first thing I would say here about this, and we'll both share our thoughts here, but the special effects were groundbreaking for the time, and they still
totally,
hold up today. It was very realistic in the way that it depicted space travel.
yeah.
And it also had so many iconic elements like the monolith and the theme song, and that anybody, of course, would recognize. Of course, maybe even from The Simpsons if they haven't seen 2001.
Yeah.
So, what's your thoughts on that?
I get the chills again thinking about the monolith.
Yeah,
It's
right.
just amazing. I've seen that movie so many times, and it's so mysterious, and the ambience that the movie creates, it's so strange, and it even the movie even have different parts. Like the beginning is like another movie inside the
Right.
movie.
Yeah, it's like a National Geographic
That's just
movie with the
amazing.
animals. Yeah, right, sure. That, by the
And
way, that's one of the
and
great scenes we should mention here. Of course, the monolith is there, and the prehistoric ape-like creatures are learning how to use a tool. And the symbolism, remember, I think it's a bone is actually what it
yeah,
is.
it
And
is.
he throws the bone, and the director, of course, shows the bone going through the air, and then the bone becomes the starship, the spaceship
Yeah.
going through space. And I was like, wow, it's just really mind blowing.
A great ellipsis.
Yeah, right. So if you haven't seen 2001, viewers, please do yourself a favor, rush out right now and watch it because you're gonna be like, wow, this is really wild.
Yeah, it's a very strange movie. I enjoy it every time I see it. And we even when we were teenagers, my friend and I, we went to our, I don't know how to say it in English, like a cine club, like a club, like
Sure.
a theater club, like a small theater that plays old movies and classic movies and cult movies. And we watched 2001 many times.
Yeah.
And also a little like Blade Runner, the the things the movie doesn't answer. That's what's amazing.
Yeah.
Like all the things that remain a mystery after the end, especially like the last sequence of the movie is just mind blowing and
Yeah.
visually perfect, and the storytelling is amazing. It's so special, that movie. I love Kubrick movies in general, but
Do you?
I think,
Let me ask you that question because I find
oh,
Stanley Kubrick to be, he can be a little divisive too, right? So would you
I'm
say
a
you're a
big fan.
fan? You're a big fan.
I'm a big fan. I've seen all the movies,
What is your
and
second favorite? Not to get too far off the topic, but what's your second favorite Kubrick movie?
I think The Shining. I think
Oh,
The
great
Shining
one.
is my
Yeah,
second.
great movie.
Yeah,
I forgot about that one. I forgot about that.
but I love them all. The first one I've seen them like just one time, and but like Full Metal Jacket, I love that movie, and well, especially 2001. It's been so important to me in my writing also because the philosophical ideas and these complex concepts that the movie transmit something that I I I I have many times tried to emulate,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
to get to a similar point, and it's very difficult. It's a very special movie.
Would you say that it has influenced your writing?
Yeah, sure,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah.
It's one of the movies that influenced me the most, I
Oh,
think.
okay.
How
Well,
about your writing?
the same, and I will tell you that just about every movie that we've talked about on today's top 11 list has influenced my writing in some way. And that was really what I kind of want to share with the viewers and also to share with my friend Matias, because number one, I enjoy working with you so much. I know we've mentioned this so more, but we've done what, 4 books now together or 5, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
And boy, they just get better and better. And I got to tell you, it's such a privilege to work with somebody who understands writing and editing and the creative process. So thanks so much for everything that you've done, Matias.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for your words, and I enjoyed also very much working with you. I think
Yeah.
we're a great match,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I think so too. And
and we still have a long way to go. Like
yeah. Yeah.
there is a road for us.
Well, I tell you, I want to say something to our viewers here. If you'd like to follow some more of our work, let's start with Matias. Where can we find you and where can we find more of your work?
Well, viewers can find me on Instagram, and Twitter, and Facebook with my name, Matias Zanetti. And I'm mainly working as a letterer, like 3 times from now. 3 times, like from 2019, I I I become like a full letterer. My writing job is a little on the side now because I have my plate full, and I'm enjoying
I'm
lettering
sure.
so much, especially lettering sci-fi comics like the one you make, Tim. I really love to letter sci-fi comics,
Yeah.
and well, we can stay in touch with the viewers in the social media, sure.
Great, great. Well, that's something I'll put the links here underneath of us. So anybody that's so inclined, please follow Matias' work. And if you're looking for a qualified editor and creator and letterer, I have to recommend him in the highest possible terms. All the work that we've done together has just been terrific, in my opinion. And I'm a huge fan of your lettering. I think I told you,
Thank you, Tim.
all the projects have just come out so beautifully. It's and I'd recommend to anybody, please check it out, because I have to mention we have a Kickstarter going, and that's
Sure.
Water Wars 2288, and you'll be able to check that out by hitting some of the links that you'll see in the description. So I hope if you like the kind of things that you saw here today, you'd probably like our book. That's what we're trying to do, is to blend these elements together. And I strongly encourage everybody to take a look at it. And in closing, I just want to say, Matias, thanks again so much for coming to the show. This is a fun one. This was a great list.
Sure, it was.
Yeah, I
Thank you,
really
Tim.
enjoyed
Thank you
making
for
it.
inviting me. I
It's my
enjoyed
pleasure.
our time very much.
The pleasure's all mine. So thanks again to the viewers for tuning in, excuse me. And we look forward to seeing you on our next video. See you around.